Hello, my name is Corey Gall, and today we're going to look at the consequences of zero tolerance policies. This is an adaptation of case 17 from our text um, for ethical leadership. So the problem in this case, the problem that's presented, is we have James, a fourth grade student at an elementary school, is we find out later is being bullied after school, off of school grounds for what the case reads. Um, and so one day, James decides to bring an unloaded firearm onto the school campus to, whether you want to say intimidate or threaten, or just feel better about his situation in the sense of gaining a little bit of control over the group of bullies. James happened to get the firearm from his father's nightstand. Intentionally took the bullets out, so it was not live. It was not loaded, but still, the possession is a big enough deal. On James's way into the school, Mrs. Heston, a teacher, observed James struggling to conceal the weapon and make it inside the door. Mrs. Heston immediately questions James as to why he was in possession of the firearm, and bit by bit gets the story out that he's being bullied. And James's plea to that was, while he may be protected in the school, outside of school is a different thing. Sure, they can, the teachers and administration can assist James during the school day, but what about afterwards when he is getting bullied? Mrs. Heston immediately passes this information on to Mr. Quayle, the administrator, who we're left with battling the decision of what to do next. The facts present in this case, obviously bringing a firearm to a school campus is never taken lightly. It comes from some United States, some federal laws, and translated into the Oregon Revised Statutes in really two locations. The first one, just generally, that it is unlawful to have a firearm on any public property, such as Capitol buildings or schools, or the list goes on. It's actually a Class C felony, which would include a maximum of 5 years in prison and a $125,000 fine. The second of the statutes listed is more directed towards a student bringing a weapon onto campus, again, loaded or unloaded. There is no difference, in that it requires the expulsion of the student. There is a clause in that in that statute that the school, the district, can perform a threat assessment, as it's more commonly known, about the student and really make the decision about what should happen next. The decision to be made, I kind of see living on a continuum of, you can go super lenient to super strict, and maybe the right decision falls in the middle, maybe it doesn't. We're going to kind of take a look at those and see what that looks like. The most lenient, effectively a slap on the wrist. The school's going to allow the student to submit the weapon and seek no penalties. Probably not the right call, but it could be an option. James is a good kid. He would never do that. It must have been a mistake. Kind of the list of excuses there goes on. A less lenient course of action would be that the school will confiscate the weapon and meet with the student and the family to decide the penalties. As stated in the book, when you get more people making a collective decision, typically the result is better for all those involved. The less strict option, the school will allow law enforcement. Now, this saying less strict does not mean less strict in the way we're reading it. It's actually more strict, but it's not as strict as it gets. The school will allow law enforcement to intervene and encourage a threat assessment to take place. And then the most strict is the school's going to involve law enforcement and the judicial system and wipe their hands of it. Just say, let it go past here and let the law figure it out. So testing these decisions with the most lenient, really the student has no disadvantages and has every advantage. There's no law enforcement involved. There's no lasting effects and really no disadvantage. The school, on the other hand, I've got to say there is kind of a pro in that the school can, still be in control of the learning and the development of that student, which they may forfeit with other decisions. And that's the trade-off. The disadvantages for the school, the cons for the school, it's not a legal decision. That's kind of the most overbearing. And you're going to lose respect to staff that hear about this zero tolerance policy and see you not enforce it. This can happen here or in any policy that you've labeled zero tolerance. The less lenient, kind of moving up the ladder a little bit, where the school's taking the weapon and having an internal meeting, I would say, between the school administration, maybe teachers that were involved in this case, the families, and maybe even district administration as well, to decide what to do next. Should be district administration, but yeah, I'm not gonna go there. So the pros for the student is that there's no real law enforcement. The punishment is handled, quote unquote, in-house. The school, the family is determining what to do with the student. The cons, over the most lenient, the student's going to have something that they have to do because of this. For the school, again, pros and cons, kind of not really. The school does have the advantage of, again, molding that student into what they want and trying to use this as a learning experience and helping the student through these hard times, as well as, embedded in all this, an opportunity to discuss bullying and decide what to do there. The cons for the school, again, it's not a law-abiding decision. And again, you're going to lose respect of your staff with the failing to adhere to zero tolerance. For the kind of option 3 that we have here, where the school's going to allow law enforcement to intervene and handle a threat assessment, the pros for the student is there is a possibility of a lessened sentencing for the student as compared to the most strict of, the Class C felony, going to go to jail or juvenile corrections for 5 years and have a lasting effect. There's a possibility that punishment could be lessened. Cons, the law enforcement is involved in maybe the judicial system and at least a suspension from school. And that's going to probably tack on some note of that Class C felony. So that's a con to the student, but they do need to deal with their consequences. For the school, the pros, if you really call them pros, first one, definitely the student may come back to school after some kind of a break. And having the ability to have a hand in the decision and in the punishment that's dealt out is also a pretty big. It's about as good of a pro as we can look for in this situation. The biggest one, though, is that this is a law-abiding decision. However, in the cons, it may not fall under that true category of zero tolerance. It depends on how zero tolerance is written into the handbooks. And again, you are going to lose the student for at least a minimal amount of time. So there is that time that could be there that you're not affecting that student. But you're going to have staff members in this situation where, hey, I thought zero tolerance meant that kid was gone. He brought a gun to school. He shouldn't be back in my class. That's going to have to be a conversation made with staff. For the most strict option, the student has no advantages. You've got something going on a permanent record. You've got the law enforcement involved and getting expelled from the school, sent to an alternative location, and a change of school placement, probably indefinitely. For the school, the advantages are a little bit that it's a law-abiding decision. That's about the only positive. The negative being that loss of ability to shape the student. The final decision that should be chosen, if available, is the less strict option, that the school is going to engage law enforcement to handle the situation and conduct that threat assessment to see what the next steps would be. If that's not an option based on how zero tolerance is written into the handbooks, the district handbooks, then it's going to have to be the most strict option, and that's the only other decision to be made. Still have to abide by the law. So as a reflection on this, we kind of looked at two principles at play: the principle of benefit maximization, trying to get the best outcome for everybody. In this one, all parties involved are gaining some benefit from the decision. The student is able to come back to school. The school is able to have the student back. There are downsides to it as well. There's probably going to be some information on the student's record that's going to follow them for a while. And the school's going to have to deal with that kind of gray area, if you call it a gray area, in that kind of a zero tolerance. Zero tolerance really means that there is no gray area, but you've created it in a sense. Kind of the last thing there, that the school can't really win in any decision that's made. If you go with more of the lenient side, you're not following the law. The strict side, you're losing effect on that student, and that's not what we want. For the principle of equal respect, I really looked at, could you apply this in any situation? Say another student brought a loaded gun onto campus, and maybe instead of the lack of ammunition, maybe the firing pin wasn't in the gun, something like that. Would that be handled the same way? I think you can handle it the same way, but that doesn't mean that the result's going to be the same. So I looked at this decision as a very equal respect decision, that you're able to apply this to many situations. However, understanding that the results could differ. So that's it. Have a good day, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say.